Hey guys, Dr. Mike Deuce, MTFU Longevity Over 50. How are you? So I've got a couple of photos up today. I'll talk about those in a second. Myself and John Defendis, famous bodybuilding luminary, we're both 22 in those pictures. I'm working with a gentleman right now. By the way, I got 48 days until my birthday, so I'm still saying I'm 54. I'll be 55 in 48 days. And this fella that I'm helping out is I think a year or two older than me, 55 or 56. He's never exercised before. He's not in terrible shape. He kind of looks like a regular person, not kind of nondescript in any particular way. I don't even think he has to lose a lot of weight. I don't even think the body weight has to change that much. It might. But today we were talking, and he says, you know, I want to look like you, me. And I said, that's certainly doable. And I said, you know, give yourself 3 years. I was painting the best case scenario for him. I said, give yourself 3 years with the right plan, with things that work for you, and that means you've got to learn your body. It's not easy, and you've got to have laser beam focus, and you've got to have tunnel vision, and you can't be rudderless. And if you really focus and work hard as you can, you'll certainly gain the same lean mass that I carry right now. And he looked at me and says, but you've been training since the 70s, and that's true. I've been training since I was 12 years old, and you know, that's over 40 years. It's hard to believe. And you would think, hey, wouldn't he be bigger? Kind of like the thing with Roadhouse. You know, whenever they meet running into Patrick Swayze, they say, hey, I thought you'd be bigger. That's not really what it's all about. If you look at the, well, before I even talk about the photos, our friend Evan Centopani, who I reference quite a bit, friend of mine, top IFBB pro, one of the best in the world, he's like me. He's 6 feet tall. He walks around at about 280 pounds, lean, top shape. And he said to me, he was almost kind of sheepish. He said, Mike, I don't like to say this, but I just touch weights. I just touch a barbell and I grow. So he's a really good responder. And I don't like talking about genetics. It seems like a cop out, but in this case, it's genetics. I may have worked as hard as him at one time. I don't know, but I certainly never, you know, got that type of size, not even remotely close. But think about this for a second. He gained almost all of his size within the first 5 years of training, he said. He's been training for at least 15 now. So the 10 years after that, why didn't he keep growing? Because there's a law of diminishing returns. You're not going to keep growing and growing and growing. He spent all the rest of the time, and as he still does, refining and making himself better and better shape, better form, giving the muscles more density, improving little details. Theoretically, think about it. If I kept growing for 4 decades, I'd be as big as the town of Wallingford where I live. I'd be 600 pounds. I don't know. Again, the hypertrophy that sets upon you from your efforts only goes a certain distance. And then after that, it's just more refinement and avoiding injury and getting better and getting more focus and getting more detail. And if you look at the photos, right, so I was talking to this guy and I said, so yeah, in 3 years you can certainly get to my size or maybe even bigger. We don't know what's within you. We don't know what your genetics holds. And the good thing about it is he's never trained. So it's almost like he's a teenager who has high hormones and they respond really well. He should respond really well pretty quick to weights and good nutrition because he's never given his body any of this type of stimuli. So he'll make most of his gains within the first few years, and he'll get to a certain size, and then he'll stop, and then he'll refine. And I think that's fantastic because he doesn't know what he's got within him, and you know it's going to be fantastic once he finds out. So if you look at these two photos, me and John Defendis, my friend John Defendis, I hope he chimes in. I'll tag him on this. John was named by Flex Magazine as the 4th hardest training bodybuilder ever, behind, I think, Tom Platz, Ronnie Coleman. I don't remember who was number 3, but he was in the top 10. So John obviously put in the work. We're both 22 right there. John's about 5 years older than me, but those photos were taken at different times. We're both 22. I'm 6 feet tall. John's about 5'8", I think. I was 186 pounds there. Today I'm about 190 pounds. I'm probably in a little better condition than that right now. That was 32 years ago. And John's probably about 235 pounds right there. So he outweighs me by 50. John back then was a monster. He was one of the mass monsters. Back then, if you were 235, you were the biggest of everyone. You know, that's. But John will probably even tell you that that for him was probably after 10 years of training. We both started, I think, before our teenage years. It may be at 11 or 12 for John. I know I started at 12. And you know, all of his growing as far as becoming volumetric and bigger and gaining mass, that was within the first 5 to 7 years. And then after that photo was taken right there of John, 10 years later, he won the Mr. USA. And I'll bet you he'll tell you that he was probably the same weight and maybe even a little lighter than that right there. So why didn't he keep growing and growing and growing? Because there's a law of diminishing returns. There's only so much. Your body has a ceiling as far as the growth goes. And that's why I like to talk more about qualitative factors versus quantitative factors. You know, how much, how strong, how big. We put that to the side. It's more quality. It's like Frank Zane says, it's not who's the biggest, it's who's the most complete. And that's a good metaphor for life in general. You don't want necessarily the biggest house, the biggest car, you know, the biggest mouth, the biggest this, the biggest that. You know, you want to kind of stay above the struggle and below the radar, as I like to say. And then when you take the shirt off, then you surprise people. I'm getting off track a little bit here. But for John, after he gained all that size, he spent the rest of the time refining and making himself better. And to this day, John's still in fantastic shape. Just had a shoulder replacement. But I still expect him to be in top form. I know he's going to unveil himself soon and be at his very best. But so that's what it is, really. After you gain the size and you become as big as you're going to be, then you're refining, you're maintaining, you're avoiding injury. If you do get injured, you train the areas around the injury. Your body may look different in the future. I like to say I'm better in a different way. I've had 26 orthopedic surgeries. But you can always get around that. There are some excuses. I know, like some people like to write, there are no excuses. That's bullshit. There are some good excuses, but not many. You can't allow yourself too many excuses. So my friend that I'm helping out right now, the over 50 guy, sure, he can absolutely get into my realm of physicality within 3 to 5 years, and I expect him to do so. That's it. Your thoughts, questions, comments, and considerations are appreciated. You can put them down below. They are my oxygen. Dr. Mike Dusa. You do have a good day. Thank you.